Hello and welcome to week 4 of the Top to Bottom Detox course. I hope you had wonderful holidays and that you've had a great start to 2021. I also hope that you've managed to come out of your holidays and are back to eating a healthy lifestyle, following a healthy lifestyle and eating a healthy diet. If you are caught up in your old habits or having a hard time coming out of the holidays, just remember to go back and review week 1 and 2. We don't want to get caught in that downward spiral, and I want to keep you on board because we have lots to cover today. So here we go. Okay, so we are in week 4, and today we're going to talk about how to detoxify your kitchen. Again, just like previous presentations, what you will get and achieving success. So practice, 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 so that you can take the information from your conscious mind and put it in your subconscious mind. All of your habits will become more fluid. Our objectives for today are to learn and understand the 7 generations principle, get clarity on why we need to detoxify our kitchen, understand how your unique needs might influence your dietary changes, and then get an understanding of which foods we want to focus on eating to create healthy meals and which ones we need to avoid, and we want to get some understanding about water filtration systems. So the 7 generations principle is based on the Haudenosaunee philosophy, and the idea is that whatever decisions we make today should result in a sustainable health for 7 generations in the future. This means how we harvest and grow our food, how we consume energy and water, and even the relationships that we form. So just a little review, we accumulate toxins through our exposure, through suboptimal detoxification processes, and a combination of the two. This is important because when we think about a pregnant woman who's exposed to toxins, her embryo is also exposed to those same toxins through the placenta. Also, when a woman has had a baby and she's nursing, any toxins that she's accumulated in her body will be passed into her infant through her breast milk. Third, a baby's body and their detoxification organs are much smaller than their adult counterparts, so toxicity will be reached much sooner. And the other really important thing to consider is that a child's body is developing immunologically, hormonally, and neurologically. There was a time in history when women were provided a medication called diethylstilbestrol, and they provided that to support their pregnancies and to prevent miscarriage. What they found is that it created abnormalities in both their little boys and girls. Those abnormalities were most notable when they tried to get pregnant themselves. Now we're coming into the 3rd generation, and that 3rd generation is coming into the age where we can note them. But that's a perfect example of how we have to be mindful, not just about what we're doing today, but also for future generations. So why the kitchen? Well, you're eating at least 2 to 3 times a day, so that's where we're going to have the greatest traction, not only to detoxify your body, but also to prevent progression of future exposures. So these are the things that you're going to look at trying to eliminate from your kitchen, from additives to colors and flavors and sweeteners, trans fats, pesticides and genetically modified organisms, antibiotics and hormone disruptors. So genetically modified organisms are when you take DNA from plant, animal, bacteria, and virus, and you combine them in ways that wouldn't naturally occur through traditional cross-breeding techniques. This is referred to as a frankenfood. The underlying motivation to do this in the first place is because you want to make the plants more resistant to insects, pests, drought, and even browning of apples. Right now it's really tricky because they've been doing this probably for about 20 years. And we don't know what the long-term effects are. It's very hard to isolate the effects. In Canada, there is no law that states that this needs to be labeled. And this is a problem because about 88% of Canadians say they would like it to be labeled. They want to be able to make an informed choice about what they eat. So I've provided in your handout the crops and the types of foods that are most likely to have genetically modified grains in them. So are pesticides really that bad? Eating foods with trace pesticides is bad for your health, especially in littles. Some fruits and vegetables are laden with pesticides while others are not. So the best ways to protect your family and yourself are to eat a variety of foods. Whenever possible, eat organic. And if you can't always buy organic, try to buy the foods that are highest in pesticides organically. Wash your produce. It's essential, but it doesn't solve the pesticide problem 100%. And eating your fruits and veggies are always a better option to skipping out on those foods because of pesticides. If you go to the Environmental Working Group, there are a list, and they update this every year. This is 2020's list. They will tell you the clean 15. So these are the foods that are least likely to have pesticide issues. And then you've got the dirty dozen, which are the most pesticide laden. Please note that some of the corn and papaya and summer squash that's on the clean 15 can be genetically modified. So you really want to make sure that those are purchased in an organic fashion. So there is another group of foods that I think need attention. A couple really need our attention because they are also high in pesticides. Peppers are high in organophosphates. One thing that's really nice is that if you can't buy them organically, cook them because the amount of pesticides will diminish with cooking. Oats, beans, and legumes really need our attention because glyphosates are very high, even if you buy those organically. And if you think about oats and hummus, there's lots of kids that are eating these foods. So I've sent a link for you to check out if you have children or grandchildren and you want that information. Rice and wheat have been found to have organophosphate type chemicals on them. Rice also has antifungals, and many rice patties, organic or otherwise, are high in arsenic. Wheat is a huge carrier for glyphosates. So in terms of organophosphates, the thing that you want to realize is just how toxic they are. They were used both in World War II and in the Gulf War because of the potent neurotoxic effects. Glyphosate is also known as Roundup, and you'll see these really packaged separately and packaged well in Home Depot because they have gained a ton of attention recently. Historically, the Environmental Protection Agency had classified them as not being cancerous. However, there have been multiple lawsuits, and finally in 2018, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer announced a new classification as probably carcinogenic. What they were finding is that farmers in California and then throughout the United States started developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And what they realized, or what they tied it to, was this use of Roundup. So there have been a few lawsuits there, and now in Canadian farmers, we're seeing it in Saskatchewan, and there's been a few lawsuits that have initiated in Canada as well. So this is the link at the bottom that you would want to check out to see which foods have high amounts of glyphosate in them. So a note on cleaning your fruits and veggies. Health Canada doesn't recommend any specific veggie cleaner. They just say wash with a scrub brush in cold running water. The idea is that there's no way to ensure a specific standard of cleaning. When we clean, we're looking to clean soil, microbes, and pesticides. In terms of soil, that's easy. Running water will brush that off. You can consider a food grade hydrogen peroxide for the microbes. And then for pesticides, the best that you can do is really scrubbing well with a scrub brush. One thing that is discouraged is using dish soap on your fruits and veggies. I know at the beginning of COVID, people started cleaning things and I think they had some big toxicity issues. So that's something just to keep in mind. So it's highly encouraged that not only eating organic when possible, but eating local when possible, because your food will taste better, it'll be fresher, it will be cheaper because you're not paying for transportation, it will have higher nutritional value because it ends up being vine ripened as opposed to storage ripened. You avoid overseas contaminants because every country has their own um, growing laws and then importation laws, and it's more eco and community friendly. So this is really important. I'm going to encourage you to look through this. I'll run through a couple different things or specific features, but I find that people use these terms interchangeably, and I think it's really important that if you're going to change your way of eating, that you understand why. So going back, allergies, sensitivities, and celiac disease are all related to different immune reactions. So food allergies are immediate immune reactions regarding immunoglobulin E, sensitivities are immunoglobulin G, and celiac disease is immunoglobulin A. I'm going to encourage you to read through them and try to gain an understanding so that you can apply this to your health in a more appropriate fashion. Celiac disease, again, like I said, is immunoglobulin A. It's genetically driven disease that you can develop at any point if you have the genes. And this is a form of autoimmune disease. So when the immunoglobulin A immune response occurs, it actually blunts these little villi and decreases the surface area, which then drastically impairs the absorption of nutrients. The only treatment is strict avoidance of gluten. Then there's intolerances. And intolerances are not immune reactions. This is when you are missing an enzyme or you've got decreased enzyme, let's say, quantity, so that you're not able to digest certain disaccharides like lactose and fructose. If you're missing the lactase enzyme, digesting lactose is difficult. And if you're missing the aldolase B enzyme, you will have difficulty breaking down fructose. There is overlap in the symptom presentation and in the diagnosis of the carbohydrate intolerances and small intestine bacterial overgrowth and small intestine fungal overgrowth. So again, you can read through, but this is essentially, this comes when someone's had chronic constipation due to a circumstance. So maybe they've just had constipation for a bit and it got really bad. Maybe they have a bowel disease, maybe they've had surgery, maybe they have diabetes and they've got slow gastric emptying. Anyhow, what happens is you've got this fecal matter just sitting in the bowel and it causes fermentation and changes the pH in the bowel. This ends up leading to a really unhealthy breeding ground, and the result is an imbalance between good bacteria, yeast, and bad bacteria. So the next two slides just give you an idea of how people can change up their diet based on their health challenges. And here I've got just a list of changes that somebody might make, going from the most general changes to the most restricted food changes. Please consult your healthcare practitioner if you're looking at doing anything really restricted. Any water fasts really do need to be monitored by a medical practitioner. So when we're looking at trying to optimize our nutrition, we want to focus on including free-range, organic, grass-fed, antibiotic, and hormone-free protein sources. You want to include sustainably sourced, wild, antibiotic-free fish, and, like we talked about before, organic, fresh, and locally sourced produce. I will reiterate, if your financial capacity doesn't permit this, just focus on making healthy choices. So this is one of the printables that you'll receive. It gives you an idea of how to form a balanced meal. Ideally, you are looking for a quarter of your plate to be protein, half of your plate to be non-starchy veggies, and if you want to include starchy veggies or grains, you can do that depending on what meal plan you're following. And you always want to include some healthy fats. That's what's going to hold you over until your next meal and balance your blood sugar. This is really a neat thing because I think so often people juice and blend and they don't really know what the benefits of each are. Juicing is great. It takes the fiber out. So if you have some digestive issues, you're getting all the nutrients very concentrated and your gut doesn't have to worry about dealing with fiber. My only concern with juicing is that many people will add a lot of fruits in, and that can challenge your blood sugar, especially when you don't have the fiber to buffer and slow down the absorption of the sugar. Blending purees everything together, so it gives you more like a smoothie consistency. You get the fiber in it. However, it is common that when you're blending, you've got a higher temperature, and so you're breaking down the enzymes that are naturally occurring in some of these fruits and veggies. I've given you some recipes here. Again, if you look at Morning Glory, it's got apples and blueberries and grapes. So if you have blood sugar challenges, you may want to just back off of that one and go to something that's a little bit more green and vegetable dense. And here are some things that you can stock your pantry with. I've given you some great ideas. And the reason why I did this is because I think often we get into our routine. Remember, our subconscious mind just automatically goes and picks the same veggies and the same carbs every week. So I wanted to just open your eyes to all the vegetables that you can select from, all the fats, all the carbs. And I wanted you to really understand that carbs are not just grains. Carbs are root vegetables as well, and fruits. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is herbs and spices. There are many more. If you are following an autoimmune paleo type of diet, you want to avoid the peppers and the paprikas and chilies, anything that'll be spicy. If you like your Indian spices, make sure you're stocked up on that. Ginger, onions, garlic are all great. So just make sure you've got the type of flavors that you really enjoy. In terms of your pantry, I highly recommend having some good healthy sweeteners. I would say that dates are my favorite. They've got some great evidence for women, well, not just for women, but for osteoporosis. So it helps with bone formation and slows bone loss. When you're looking at stevia, Organic Traditions has an unprocessed green powdered stevia, so it's literally dehydrated and blended. Honey, pure maple syrup are great, and molasses is very high in minerals. In terms of fats and oils, you can see here, and I don't know that this is in your handout, so please take note. You want to cook with saturated fats. These are stable. They won't react as quickly as unsaturated fats. The unsaturated fats, like your olive oil, your sesame oil, and your flax oil, those are great for topping. I love having seeds and nuts stocked in my house. Obviously, you want to make sure that you don't have any nut allergies. I encourage you to store these in the fridge or freezer. And that's just to prevent the oils from becoming rancid. Make sure they're in a sealed bag or container as well. If you want to grind these, coffee grinders are fabulous. So just grab a coffee grinder that you can use specifically for grinding your nuts and seeds. If you want to make your own butter, a high-powered blender will help you with that. Another thing I just wanted to bring up is that if you are doing food prep one day, it is so lovely if you can just go through and use your food processor and shred up a bunch of different things and package them. I will often make muffins out of apples, beets, carrots, and zucchini. I love having riced cauliflower ready to go in my freezer. I'll have a separate container for beets and carrots that I put in smoothies with berries. I will also keep separate containers for apples and carrots for like a Morning Glory type of oatmeal for the kids, and zucchini muffins are always delicious. And of course, you can make these grain-free, low sugar, and very healthy. The last thing that I really wanted to touch on is the importance of broths, and I've included a recipe for a high potassium vegetable broth and a bone broth. These are very nutrient dense and great to sip on or use as a base for a fabulous soup. So here is the potassium vegetable broth recipe and the bone broth recipe. And I want to go through this. Again, I'm going to go through pretty quickly because it's easier for you to go through and read for it to have a greater impact. But I really wanted to just cover the idea that baking, poaching, steaming, sauteing, boiling, and stewing and dehydrating are healthier ways of cooking. You want to avoid the really high temperature cooking like barbecue, frying, and broiling. When you're cooking at high temperatures, and especially on a barbecue, you're forming polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and heterocyclic amines, and these are cancer-causing chemicals. You're also forming advanced glycation end products, and this can cause oxidative damage in the body. And so you need, this is where you would go back to last week and you remember all those antioxidants that buffer against the oxidants. And then barbecuing also leads to the formation of dioxins. And while they don't permeate into your food, they are released into the environment. So things that you can do if you really love your barbecuing is you can choose thin cuts of meat and try not to cook directly over the heat source. And whatever you do, try to avoid that charring. So you will also want to detoxify the tools that you use to cook. Great options are stainless steel, cast iron, enamel covered cast iron, so just on the outside, and oven safe glass. You want to avoid aluminum, which is a neurotoxin, copper, which is accumulated in the liver and can deplete your zinc levels, Teflon, I will explain in a second, and then the glazed ceramics, anything color tinted or anything with decorative components, they tend to be high in lead. In terms of Teflon or Tefal, these are aluminum pans that are coated with chemicals, and these chemicals, when heated to high temperatures, can leach toxic fumes very quickly. So one thing that will really elucidate this is that if you have a pet bird and you bring that pan, the Tefal, to a high temperature too quickly, it will create toxic chemicals or release toxic chemicals that can kill your bird in seconds. In humans, this looks like Teflon flu or polymer fume fever. And then, of course, there's risks with chronic exposures, chronic low-grade exposures as well. And then we were talking about the cookware that we're using because of lead. Tamara Rubin is someone who really explores this a fair amount. And things that you want to bear in mind are that the old Corningware and vintage containers, vintage Pyrex containers are often full of lead. So when your parents hand you these big, beautiful old bowls and cookware, you might want to kindly decline. Le Creuset is a company that's really well known, but they've actually been found to have lead. So great options would be the glass, like see-through glass containers and cookware by Libby, Anchor, Hawking, Pyrex, and Duralex. And then I wanted to just have a word about water because many people ask me about water. Water's not regulated. We're really blessed to have running water in Ontario and in our communities. I recently learned that, I'm very privileged because I didn't even realize that many First Nations communities in Ontario and Canada don't even have access to this. So when you select the water that you use, if it's alkaline, I highly encourage you to get pH strips and double check that it's alkaline because no one's double checking this for you. Reverse osmosis is probably the best filtration system, but it will also filter out your minerals. I also encourage you to think about the type of water that you have. In Newmarket, the water is very hard. So no matter what you do, you need a water softener. Otherwise, any one of your filtration systems will be blocked up by calcium deposits very quickly and destroyed. Something else to think about is that you want it to be practical for how you use water in your home. You might want a countertop gravity water filter. So that's like the big separate jugs. You might want a water filter jug that goes into your fridge. You might want it to be faucet mounted or under the sink. And you might want to compare this to, or not compare it to, but you might want to also look at getting a shower head filter because we often think about water in terms of us drinking, but when you're standing in a hot shower and the steam is being released, I need you to imagine that any chemicals in your water are evaporating into that steam and you're breathing it in. So this week's challenge is to take an inventory of your pantry and your cooking equipment. The first thing I want you to do is take a bold stance. Anything that is in your pantry that you don't want in there, get it out, donate it, or throw it out. And then consider what cooking equipment you would like to replace this year and make it part of your 2021 goals. I wish you the best week and tons of health and happiness this week. Talk to you soon.